future. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, it is Monday News Roundup, but yes, it is Monday, February 12th, 2024. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop Live. It's going to be a Q&A. Let's hear a little bit about what you've got going on in your neck of the woods tonight. A little bit of discussion about some things in the news and looking forward. Let you know a little about some shows coming up. I'm very, very excited. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. On Out to Coop Live, we talk to progressives, activists, and troublemakers of all sorts right from our own backyards and across the country. You can also join us at the end of the week, for our Friday Politics Roundup, although this week's going to be a little bit different. News about that in a minute. Usually we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. We'll get into a little of that tonight. And you can get all our shows by subscribing to our podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And you can support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress for all the details. You can also help out the show by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. If you're one of our awesome podcast listeners, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen on, and leave a comment to let other folks know why you like the show, and share that link out. Little things like this help other people find the show. I've got a little bit of a special ask on this one tonight. I don't know if you saw the news. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, but Blue Sky, which is the big Twitter kind of contender, built by Jack Dorsey, from the one who founded Twitter, and it's meant to be a much more open platform, getting away from the absolutely insanity that's happening over there on Twitter with Elon Musk. Well, they just opened up their platform finally. Up until last week it was invite only. This week it is everybody can go in there and join. You can go over and become a participant in that community. BSKY, that's bsky.app, app, bsky.app, app. All right, you go over there, you can sign up for there. It's very similar to Twitter, be very, very similar. And, frankly, I would love to be able to get off the bird site. And, but you know what? The problem is we got over 2,700 people following us over on the bird site. And we're just starting to build our audience on Blue Sky. So if you head on over to Blue Sky, we can get away from Elon Musk, stop feeding the beast, and get on over to Blue Sky and start to kind of building that out. It's a much more sane place to be. I'll tell you that. Anyways, back to this. If you're looking for more PA progressive talk, tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. Check him on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your streams, and you subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go to thericksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. You got to check out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast if you haven't already. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house, and they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. Subscribe to their podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. And The Signal, of course, has got their podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. Let me switch that around a bit. The Bucks County Beacon has got their podcast, The Signal. What am I doing here? The Signal is hosted by the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril Michaleko, and produced by yours truly. Twice a month, The Signal will shine a light on right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. Cyril invites guests who can provide insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive roots. Check it out at thebuckscountybeacon.podbean.com for The Signal. And also check out The Civic Circle. That is another podcast from the Bucks County Beacon that tackles politics and policy from a Gen Z lens. Sarah Zhang, Mallory Marzan, and Alexandra Coffey are students from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and once a month they chat about activism, advocacy, and all the political happenings affecting their generation today. You can check them out at just civiccircle.podbean.com. That's civiccircle.podbean.com. thegaming.podbean.com. Their latest episode just dropped last week. We've got a new episode of The Signal dropping Wednesday. And for all you gamers out there, The Game-In is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show. They got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops, and kids get discounts with every A on their report card. Gotta love it. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at The Game-In. That's with 2 N's. Got a question about a game, look for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. You can check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongADayman, 2 N's at SongADayman on Twitter. Well, we've got some exciting shows coming up here in the next couple of weeks, I'm very happy to say. Basically, you might have recalled a little article that just dropped in Vanity Fair called How the Far Right Took Over a Pennsylvania School Board and How Parents Took It Back. That was a little piece written by Catherine Joyce. Catherine Joyce, of course, has been on this show before. She's an investigative editor in These Times, and she basically wrote the story that I have been waiting to see for so long. It is the story of how the community organized in the Penridge School District and overturned the extremists and won. Catherine Joyce's latest piece in Vanity Fair, she is going to be on the show this Friday. We're trying to nail down a time right now. If she gets back to me on the time today, I'll let you know before we get out of here today. But otherwise, check your socials. I'll look for that. It's going to be a special Friday during the day, a Friday episode. But don't worry, of course, if you miss it, you got to work. I totally get it. It will be live up on our YouTube channel. It'll be on our podcast, and it will be, of course, on our Patreon. So do check that out. That's Catherine Joyce. This coming up this Friday. We'll be talking about her piece in Vanity Fair, how the right wing took over a Pennsylvania school board and how parents took it back. I'm very excited about that. Catherine was on the show, a couple months ago now, a few months ago now. And she's just amazing. I mean, her work has been instrumental in my mind in tracking the rise of the religious right, and the impact they are having on policy. She's a fantastic journalist. She's just an all-around, just great person. And I look forward to talking to her more again on Friday. And then on Monday, February 26th, that's kind of a week and a half away, we'll be talking to Steve Oros and potentially his lawyer. Looks like we got that locked down, but we'll just be making sure that everything's going to pan out. The Steve Oros on 7 p.m. on Monday, February 26th. If you remember, Steve Oros is the faculty member who had open heart surgery, and the administration there, Kenneth Hawkinson, President Kenneth Hawkinson in particular, basically pushed a policy that was forcing everyone back in in-person classrooms, despite the fact that COVID was still rampant in the fall of 2021. Having open heart surgery, Steve was doing a great job recovering, got the permission to go back to teaching as long as it was virtual, because if he was exposed and got COVID when he was still recovering from his open heart surgery, he could die. So he put things in, put his requests in, said, hey, this is great news. I could come back and teach, but they denied his accommodations, denied accommodations of the American Disability Act, and just denied it out of hand. Well, that's been an ongoing court case. He won an initial court case. He just won an appeals case in federal court, which basically found that, Kutztown University administration knowingly and purposely put in a policy that was designed to deny people for their accommodations of the American Disability Act for anything that was related to COVID. So, and then they basically told everyone that, well, okay, if a person says that they want accommodations, we're going to deny them. So they had already done that, or already decided ahead of time they were not going to kind of consider people's individual circumstances, which is a requirement under the law. They just won this big federal case, and it has implications for how the ADA Act, or implications for nationally, really, about the American Disabilities Act and how accommodation works, and the denials and the erosion of protections of the American Disability Act. And according, from what I understand, there's some possibility that this case will become part of a bigger case that will be going forward to the Supreme Court. So what we'll do on that show, one is that give you a little kind of reminder of what the case was about, but have opportunity to dig in a little bit what the judge found. The judge was scathing in its evaluation of what Kutztown University administration, Kenneth Hawkinson, and the rest of their crew did there. There was like no question about how in the wrong they were, and knowingly in the wrong they were, all the time denying that they had done the very thing that they did. So it's going to be, I think, a really great conversation, a great follow-up with Steve. So that's this Friday at the 16th. We'll be talking to Catherine Joyce about her piece in the Vanity Fair about the Penridge School District and the parents and community members who fought back and won. And then on Monday, the 26th, we'll be talking to Steve Oros about his victory in federal court. So I'm very much looking forward to this. I have been really attempting to trying to kind of think about doing some more interviews now, and bringing in more folks to comment about what's happening locally and then give us a little bit more context. I've got like several irons in the fire right now. I know you hear me say this all the time, but it's generally true. We may have somebody for the 19th too as well, but I'll let you know if that is going to go down. And if we don't have somebody for the 19th, then we'll see if we can move it to then we'll either have an open show like tonight, or we'll let you know who's going to be there. That's what I'm trying to say. Emily, great question. Thinking about Steve's health. Steve is doing well. He is teaching. I give this guy so much credit I can't even tell you. He showed up at the beginning of the year. There's this kind of like opening day, or beginning of the semester, I guess. There was a big opening day, beginning of the year too, opening day, kind of celebrations. He was out there handing out kind of his court case to people so they can be informed of what was going on, what the judge was finding. He has been, now he's been appearing on other kind of podcasts, other shows that have been focused on his case, or in particular kind of say podcasts or news sites that are focused on questions of disabilities. It's been great seeing Steve out there telling his story beyond kind of the Kutztown University or kind of our region. Because it does have national implications. When employers knowingly violate the ADA or they refuse to give individual accommodations, these courts are basically saying you can't do that. We've already decided this, right? This is not doing this. And it also goes to show the kind of hubris that these employers feel. That they could just go ahead. They could lie to your face. This is what President Kenneth Hawkinson at Kutztown University did to all of us faculty members, to our faculty union, to Steve Oros himself, to his lawyers. They constructed bald-faced lies saying that they didn't have any policy that was going to deny accommodations to everyone. No, they didn't have it. They still had a process. No. We suspected it going in. When you heard Steve on this show before, the same issue was, he's like, no, they knew what they were doing. And sure enough, this court case not only finds that, yes, they knew what they were doing, they have the receipts, right? They've got the documents showing that they knowingly did it and then turned to the public and lied. So Kutztown University is going to pay money, right? One, for hiring all these lawyers to defend a case that was knowingly wrong. And now they're going to pay damages, right? And that's a cost that gets passed on to students, right? And taken away from the other educational missions because Kenneth Hawkinson and his administration at Kutztown University were so stubborn in their idea that we're going to have grit and fortitude or get back to in-person class because that's who we are. As I've said before, right? As you've may have seen it on here, this is like, that guy, the king in Shrek, when he gets out there and he says, "Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make." That's Kenneth Hawkinson. So, I hope you turn out, and I hope you'll turn out to support Steve. I think he's going to have some suggestions about how we can actually help. The attention on his case has been really important. So, Catherine Joyce on the Penridge School District from her article in Vanity Fair coming up this Friday. Sometime during the day, I'll let you know details as that comes up. And Steve Oros on Monday, the 26th. So, pretty awesome. As you can tell, I'm pretty thrilled. Oh, God. So I'd love to hear what's happening for everybody out there. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. If you've got things that are happening in your community, there's updates, things you think we should be paying attention to. I'd love to hear what's on your mind. Love to hear what you've been kind of grappling with as of late. Right before the show tonight, we got the notification that we're actually getting, there's going to be a snow day in the Penridge School District tomorrow. So it literally came in at like 6:58. The phone call rang, and I'm looking at the numbers and, oh, that looks like that number. I better go check it out. My daughter had already picked up the phone. Yes, and dancing around. So we got a little snow day. So it sounds like it's going to be a legit snow day tomorrow, like actually with snow. That it's going to feel a little bit like winter. Hasn't felt much like winter for the past several days, as what temperatures over this weekend hit in the 60s. It was pretty crazy. That's our climate future. But I don't know about you, but the snow is going to do me good. As someone who comes from the snow belt, it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. I love the snow, and I really miss it. There you go. So yeah, so let me know what's on your mind. I got a few things that I think would be kind of important to touch on today. One, speaking of climate stuff, I don't know if you saw this, but Michael Mann he is the scientist, he's the climate scientist who famously kind of produced this graph called the hockey stick. It's that thing that kind of shows that, like, for a long time, temperatures on the planet were pretty stable, maybe going up a little bit, but pretty stable. Then they went like this after, with industrialization. So basically to demonstrate pretty definitively that with industrialization and the burning of fossil fuels that we were warming the planet. Right, that became folded into was one of the version of the graph was featured in Al Gore's, kind of award-winning documentary on climate change, on An Inconvenient Truth. But Michael Mann paid a price for this, right? He's a scientist, right? He was doing scientific work. And once he started publishing his findings about the burning of fossil fuels and the direct connection to climate change, he was targeted with these multi-million, if not billion-dollar attacks, and they were designed to destroy him, really. Destroy his reputation, destroy his work, and make him like a persona non grata in kind of public circles, right? To make him sound crazy. Well, he just won a defamation lawsuit. And defamation lawsuits in the United States are not, right, easy to win. Right? They're easy to win over in the UK. They've got different sets of laws. But when you're talking about a public figure and you're talking about comments that are being made about a public figure, it's very difficult. It's an uphill road to demonstrate defamation. Well, he just won his case. So I'll read you here just this little bit. This is a little kind of right up from The Guardian, just so that, I think this deserves a little space and time, given the fact that he was shot. And he's, it's in Pennsylvania. He was a professor at Penn State University. He has since left Penn State. Now he's at UPenn, kind of in their climate institute down there. So this is a big deal. So as reported in The Guardian, the high-profile climate scientist Michael Mann has been awarded $1 million by a jury in a defamation lawsuit against two conservative writers who compared his depictions of global heating to the work of a convicted child molester. No joke. The case stretches back 12 years. I'm sorry. The case stretches back 12 years. In a statement posted on Mann's Twitter account, or X account, one of his lawyers said, quote, "Today's verdict vindicates Michael Mann's good name and reputation. It is also a big victory for truth and scientists everywhere who dedicate their lives to answering vital scientific questions impacting human health and the planet." Mann rose to fame for a graph first published in 1998, the journal Nature, that was dubbed the hockey stick, which I was talking about. The work brought Mann, then at Penn State and now at the University of Pennsylvania, wide exposure, and it was included in the report by Al Gore's documentary, as I was telling you. Emails from Mann and other scientists were leaked in 2009 in an incident known as ClimateGate, which was completely manufactured. With climate denialists claiming that Mann manipulated data, investigations by Penn State and others, including an examination of the emails by the Associated Press, found no misuse of data by Mann. Regardless, in 2012, the Competitive Enterprise Institute, a libertarian think tank, published a blog post by Rand Simberg that compared investigations by Penn State University into Mann's work with a case of Jerry Sandusky, a former assistant football coach who was convicted of sexually assaulting multiple children. Quote, Mann could be said to be the Jerry Sandusky of climate scientists, except for instead of molesting children, he had molested and tortured data, Simberg wrote. Another writer, Mark Stein, S-T-Y-N, later referenced Simberg's article in his own piece in National Review, calling Mann's research fraudulent. Mann sued both men and their publishers, and in 2021, a judge dismissed the two outlets as defendants, saying they could not be held liable, but the claims against the individuals remained. Simberg and Stein argued that they were merely expressing their opinion. According to the Mann Legal's team statement, the 4-week jury trial in District of Columbia Superior Court resulted in punitive damages of $1,000 against Simberg and $1 million against Stein. I hope this verdict sends a message that falsely attacking climate scientists does not protect speech, Mann said. This is a huge deal, right? Now, again, this is a high profile case, but the bigger issue here, by attacking Mann and by attacking Mann so directly, what they essentially did is they like chilled all kind of discussion of scientists. This has been discussed like quite a bit over the years now, where once those attacks on Michael Mann happened, right, he was really a leader in climate scientists. Other scientists were also very reluctant to get too public with their warnings. There's some suggestion that this kind of like, well-funded climate denial industry that stemmed initially from the Heartland Institute, which was significantly funded by Exxon and all other kind of big oil companies and other kind of billionaires. That institute had a conscious effort to kind of produce and promote climate denial, and they would also go on to attack climate scientists. None of them as high profile as those two writers who Mann won a suit against, but nonetheless that put a damper on scientists' willingness to speak out, right, in very direct terms. Now we've seen a turn in that, right, over the past several UN climate reports that have come out of their climate science, the IPCC, have been much more forthright in not kind of mincing words when it comes to the causes of climate change being the burning of fossil fuels, the fact that we have to get off of the burning of fossil fuels in 6 years, not sooner. This is a big deal. And this goes against the backdrop, right, of the fact that this past year, right, 2023, was the first time in recorded history, right, that we have breached the 1.5 degrees of warming level. 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. Why is that significant? Well, as you've been listening to the show, it's significant because the IPCC, the UN's climate teams, basically have found that we have to hold heating below 1.5 degrees if we're to avoid significant catastrophe. Initially, the agreement, like the Paris Agreement, which the Trump administration refused to sign, but the Paris Agreement, or refused to renew, I guess, what he refused to sign, or what he refused to renew, the 1.5 degree, it originally was 2 degrees of warming, right? In part because they recognize we are on the track to get way past 1.5 degrees, right? So they said 2 degrees, but then you had all these amazing speeches and amazing of public discussions from leaders of island nations who are saying that 2 degrees is a death sentence for our nation and culture. Because at 2 degrees of warming, the science shows that those island nations will be underwater. So because of the pushback, right, of those folks, right, the Paris said, okay, they had to deal with the truth, right? 1.5 degrees warming is all we can go. We're already there now. So the more protections that we get through these kind of lawsuits, where Michael Mann wins this lawsuit, the more important that is going to be going forward, because we're going to need to hear like the God's honest truth going forward. I mean, and that's I don't know what else to say, because some significantly difficult choices have to be made, and I'm not just talking about individuals changing light bulbs. I mean, we're talking society-wide changes. Naomi Klein famously said, "This changes everything," right? And it does. And it is going to require to change everything if we are going to save the planet. If we are going to save millions and millions and millions of people's lives, billions of dollars of property damage, and many of the kind of cities and nations and places that we love, if we want to keep them, somewhat accessible. So big win for Michael Mann. Of course, the Trump stuff has just been absolutely kind of crazy. I'm slowly kind of dipping my toe back in the national politics stuff, because I just think it's an absolute disaster. But nonetheless, it's going to be important for us, obviously, going forward. At this point, there doesn't seem to be a heck of a lot of excitement, especially among the kind of the center to the broad left, for Joe Biden. His poll numbers continue to be kind of like, right? The big meh is all across the Biden administration. And look, we can talk till we're blue in the face about all the things that the Biden administration accomplished, right? And look, we just talked about climate. The biggest climate package that has ever been passed in this country's history was passed under Biden, right? And it was not the one he wanted. The one he wanted was so much better, right? The Build Back Better plan, that was the kind of investment we needed in our future. But because of the Republicans in this country and Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, the two conservative Democrats, because of them, right, they did not pass the Build Back Better bill. And because of the Democratic Party's unwillingness to abandon the rules of the House and allow for a simple majority, I mean, there's a whole lot of things. Now, again, eventually, once we see this, I'm not going to go through it all again. There's several things that could have been done with a more forceful Democratic Party leadership, but there's still, this is the problem of having, people leading our country, right, who cut their teeth in politics in the 1990s and 1980s. The world that we live in now requires a new generation of leaders, right? Ones that are not afraid to speak the truth, ones that are not afraid to push the envelope. This is always the hope of the squad. That crew and the people that they bring in on their coattails. It's the generation of leaders that we need. And the reason why so many people are meh about Biden, you ask about specifically what his policies is. It's not that they hate his policies, just like everyone thinks the guy is too old. Right. And I'm not gonna be saying look, it's his memory and he's too old and he's senile and all that kind of. Look, we all know the right wing playbook, right? They're doing. My wife was even saying this the other day. She's like, look, the same thing they did to Hillary Clinton, right? They're going to come out with this report and they're going to use the report to bludgeon Joe Biden with, and that's going to raise questions in people's minds about his competence for office. And meanwhile, they're going to avoid any criticism of Trump, right? The fact that that guy is practically off his rocker across the board. He's basically saying that, telling the world, yep. When I met with the NATO leaders, I told them, look, if you don't pay your dues, if you don't kind of fund your militaries and what you agreed to, then we're gonna encourage Putin to invade your country. What? And he just basically has been out there telling that story again. Where's the scrutiny there? In the same way. Right. The fact is, look, and again, I understand reasons, right? I know reasons because people expect Trump to be crazy, right? They expect him all this kind of stuff, and his people love it. But the problem is that look, we need it kind of to have be matched on the other side, right? We need to basically have a political movement on the other side that's going to be able to match that kind of enthusiasm. And I hate to say it, it's like, that's what we lost, like when Bernie Sanders did not get the nomination. Right? I'm not want to kind of relitigate the kind of like Sanders Clinton stuff, right? I mean, but I think as a historical context, what Bernie Sanders, the campaign of Bernie Sanders brought to the fore were the ideas and the energy and the ethos that we need going forward. Now, the second time around when Bernie ran again, I mean, look. The problem that we have now, even with Bernie Sanders, right? And I know there's some people who are going to be diehard Bernies forever, but look, Bernie Sanders is old too. And that is, again, I'm not saying, well, Bernie Sanders is incompetent too. And that's not the point. The point is that in a democracy, your government is supposed to reflect the people. And you need to basically see it to be it, right? And whether it's the image of Bernie Sanders or the image of Joe Biden, that does not reflect the vast majority of people in this country anymore. And I don't know if it ever did. So, I mean, those things kind of, deeply, deeply concern me. Amy says, the Dems, hey, Amy, what's going on? The Dems have failed in this arena, and I'm so tired of their mainstream bland candidates. Me too. Me too. And, the problem is, and I'm sure I'm not telling everybody out there things that anyway, we have this conversation over and over and over again. Right? I had this conversation with some people at Kutztown last week. And, who were like passionate, say, that's it. I can't vote for the Democratic Party. I can't vote for the Democratic. I'm going to vote for Cornel West when he's running, or I'm going to vote for blah, blah, blah. And look, I think like presidential campaigns on the part of the left at the last minute through another celebrity is a failed enterprise. All it does is assuage the feelings of people. It makes me feel like, okay, I did something that was I'm going to send them, I'm going to give them a lesson. But I'm telling you, they do not learn a lesson. The lesson that they learn is there's like 2 to 3% of Americans who are disgruntled. And look, I say this as somebody who, when I lived in Washington, D.C., I campaigned for Ralph Nader. Right? And I campaigned for Ralph Nader. I was actually, work the polls, right, for him. I, went out and lobbied for him, right, and all that kind of stuff. And that was a high stakes election, as we know. The Supreme Court decided that election. And I was in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. hasn't elected a Republican for anything in like forever, right? Right? I mean, it's like I was invested in, there was excitement about Nader's campaign, and there was actually, it looked like at the time that they're going to build something for the long haul. There was a strategy, right? That wasn't simply about like, oh, the two parties suck. Yeah, there was that. But it was like, you need to vote kind of because the two parties have let you down. Just vote against them because they don't deserve your vote. Well, that's not a strategy. That's grievance. But the strategy at that time, the Nader campaign is say, look, and this is what, we learned, right? I remember learning this for the first time. It's like, look, in order to be included, and he was running on the Green Party at that time. This was when the Green Party had, some possibilities of doing something. It's like, so we need to kind of like get the 5%, right? You get 5% of showing up in enough, kind of like nationwide polls or different regions, whatever. Then you're excuse me, guaranteed a place on the ballot. That was the first hurdle, right? And the idea was that you can build from there. Once you're guaranteed a place on the ballot, and that means things like, oh, then they have to consider like including you in debates. That means that you are kind of guaranteed kind of matching funds, right? And for the federal elections, right? That kind of stuff. And those are real infrastructure, party building kind of things, right? And at the same time, because it was high stakes, you had Al Gore was, again, once again, not a good political candidate. You might love his politics, but the guy was not a good political candidate. And so that was a problem. You had George W. Bush, and that was a big deal, right? So Michael Moore, for example, was out there basically saying, look, he was supporting Nader, but he was also somebody, and I agreed with him, basically said, okay, look, if you're a Nader voter in Washington, D.C., for example, vote for Nader, right? Because look, even if Nader got 20% of the vote in Washington, D.C., Al Gore's still going to win. He's still going to win. Why? Because there were so many Democrats and there was like a tiny number of Republicans. But Moore is also saying, look, there's too much at stake here. So if you're in Florida where the polls are like close, vote for Gore. Right? That was a kind of like an understanding of like what was kind of happening and what you're trying to do and the difficulties of doing that. Again, there's all sorts of things that were flawed in that. And I could tell you, working at the polls, like for Nader in Washington, D.C., and telling people this and having, because that was primarily what you're trying to kind of like getting people to understand in a very short period of time. Hey, look, there, and we had the numbers, I can't remember the percentages, but 90 some odd percentage of the residents of Washington, D.C. are registered Democrat. I said, you can vote for Nader and feel good about your vote for Nader, right? At the same time, you're not going to jeopardize Al Gore's nomination. This is about party building long term. But, you know, again, that runs against the tradition of American politics when we vote because we want to feel like our vote is kind of, it kind of matters, right? And look, I get it. I look at the, the candidates that the Democratic Party offers since Clinton, I have had deep problems with, right? And yes, I have that same feeling. I'm voting for this person. And do I feel like, you know, this person represents me, is going to, no, right? What I'm doing is like, you know, I'm trying to ensure that we get one more day to fight, right? That's all that matters. Right? We saw what Trump did, right? This is how I look at it. We saw what Trump did. We saw what George Bush did. We got an entire new, like, international security apparatus and surveillance apparatus because of that dude after 9/11. There's significant consequences. And so, yes, the Dems, they continue to fail on a national level into really pushing the envelope and actually building a kind of a party, like a fighting party, and making inroads where they haven't made them before, and proposing policies, bold policies where people can see a different version of the future. But the Republicans want to destroy shit. And so when I'm voting for a Democrat, like I'm going to vote for Joe Biden this year, unless something happens, right? You know, who knows? People are like, oh, I hear Michelle Obama filed papers. Yeah, whatever. You can talk all you want until I see that actually something like a public filing or something like this. It's not going to matter. Right now, for all practical purposes, Joe Biden is the nominee. And if that continues and he gets the official nomination, I am going to vote for him in the fall. Am I going to feel great about it? Am I going to feel enthusiastic? No. But I am going to basically, you know, do what I can to make sure that I get people out to vote because I want the ability to fight one more day. We said this the last election. We said this past fall's election. The voting on election day does not determine it should not write the timeline. Our timeline has to be longer than that. This is one of the things I love about, not to plug it too much, but Catherine Joyce's piece on what happened in Penridge. And this, you've heard me talk about this on the show too as well. It was like, this wasn't just like, a one and done. This wasn't like people just said like, oh, we got some bad people on the school board, so what should we do? Oh, let's run for office. And they just like snapped their fingers, built an organization, had candidates that ran and won. No. There was a minimum of 3 election cycles with a group of people who stayed in this to build the party and to build the organization further. These are folks that are actually interviewed in Catherine Joyce's piece, so you should definitely check it out. The whole idea was that, look, they stayed in it, they built over time. And those folks who won that election and the organization that was built to kind of, get out the vote, that went door knocking and did all this stuff, that is so absolutely critical because they built something from the ground up. And to some degree, they put their kind of like, right there to the Democratic Party. And what I mean by the Democratic Party, I mean, they ran as Democrats. Don't get me wrong. But they also learned that, some of these consultants that the Democratic Party sends in don't know shit about what's happening in our communities. They're going off some kind of like, tested playbook that all the data analytical blah, 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 blah. They're messaging for people who don't really exist. What they did here in this community is they campaigned as living, breathing human beings to other living, breathing human beings on the behalf of candidates who are also living, breathing human beings. They weren't poll tested individuals. They weren't focus grouped, messaged. There were people who cared about their community, and they talked to other people who cared about their community. And they won. That's what the Democrats have to get in their mind. And we do not have that kind of party infrastructure in the Democratic Party. For me, and again, I'm 100% willing to hear all the disagreements and the criticisms of this position. I'm aware of many of them myself. But from my perspective, the best possibility, like if you're somebody who really cares about a third party, who thinks that our politics are fundamentally broken in this two-party system and we're rapidly going down in fire. And so you think the only way out is third party, for me, the squad is what you need. You need that wedge. You need the wedge inside the Democratic Party. They've already done this on the Republican Party. You can see the Republican Party today is run by the extreme elements of the party, with Donald Trump as the little cherry on the top. They dictate policy, and the quote normies, right? The normies in the Republican Party are scared crapless, right? They're scared out of their minds of those folks, even though they only represent a minority of the elected officials. The quote unquote normies go along with the extremists to help make everything more extreme. They built a constituency that people, and look, I understand all the arguments about where the money is and like how much money is over there and the billionaires that you've heard us talk about this on the show, as long as the show has been on the air. Right? The same kind of thing has got to happen in the Democratic Party. I'm sorry. There has to be the wedge. And we're seeing, for example, and it's a really complicated one, right? But we're seeing the fractures right now when it comes to what's happening in Israel and Gaza. We're standing here on the eve, not just of a snowstorm here in the backyard, but on the eve of a potential genocidal act on the part of the Israeli government. The Israeli government has driven the Palestinian people out of their homes, civilians out of their homes, said, go south where it's safe. And as they went south, they bombed them and killed them. Go to this location, go to this refugee camp, and that'll be safe. And then they go to the refugee camp, and the Israeli government bombs them and kills them. And then they say our goal is to get everybody to Rafah, right on the kind of Egyptian border. You'll be safe there. And what do they just do? They just killed more. For what they say, they went in there to save these 2 hostages, and they did. They saved 2 hostages. They were still hostages that were in Rafah. And they killed dozens of kids and people. And you got the Biden administration sitting there going like, well, Israel's our friend. We stand by Israel. Even the Biden administration is having difficulty kind of like squaring the circle on this one now. Because the Israeli government is so extreme and so genocidal in its actions. And once again, they're afraid. They're motivated by fear. I saw this exchange that happened the other, and you've probably seen a version of this, right? Where you have an Israeli official who comes out and basically says, "What are you telling me to do? What do you think? You think we should stand by, right? As these Hamas militants come and rape and kill our citizens, like in cold blood? There is nobody on the planet that I know of who is saying you should just stand by and allow that to happen and just say, oh, shucks, it's okay. Nobody's saying that. From what I see, the vast majority of folks are sitting there saying, like, that was horrific and all those people should be punished. No doubt. That was an act of terrorism and slaughter and brutality, anti-Semitism right across the board, annihilation of those people, right? But that doesn't give you a blank, give you a clean slate or a get out of jail free card to go and commit genocide of your own. That's insane to me. And the Israeli official comes on and says, you expect us to stand by? And you see these people, these mainstream Democrats being like, we don't. And they try to Blinken sits there and he says this nonsense. And you have all the polls show the vast majority of the Democratic Party, the people, when you talk to people who are registered Democrats, right, are not with the Biden administration on this. And guess what? The vast majority of people can do 2 things at once. They can say the Israeli government should not be allowed to commit genocide, and we have to make sure that this doesn't lead to more further anti-Semitism against Jewish people. Right? Most people can make the distinctions. But as I'll say this, and I'll say it again and again and again and again, and as Naomi Klein said, we have to be on the side of the children, not the guns. That might be a little reductive for your mind. I don't know. But for me, it's clear. You can be for protecting Palestinian people and protecting Jewish people and Israeli citizens. None of those kids should be slaughtered mercilessly. None of them should be kind of raped and brutalized. That's what you need to stand with. You can be against the Israeli government and support the right of Jewish people to exist. I mean, come on. I mean, how brain dead do you have to be to see that as a problem or as a contradiction? I mean, seriously. And yet you have these spokespeople from the Israeli government that are come out there, and you have, like Democrats and these kind of mainstreamy folks are kind of like, and they're worried that they're going to be called anti-Semitic because they saw what the right wing did to all those university presidents, right? Drove them into resignations and firings, right? I mean, and they're afraid of it, as opposed to be able to articulate another version of the events. I mean, the Jews for Peace organization, they're doing it. They've been out there from the beginning saying, because we were the victims of genocide, we will not stand by and allow for another genocide to exist. Our job, the lesson of history has been that we need to prevent any people who are going to be subjected to genocide. Again, not a difficult position to have. It is one thing to know that in war, this is not a war. I mean, these are kind of militias, terrorist organizations. You know, they're funded from these different governments all in this network of kind of like corruption and terror, right? Yeah, they're all that kind of stuff, right? But to say there's a war of like Hamas and Israel, as if these are two equal side, it's just crazy to me. And, you know, I really appreciate, you know, I've said this on the show before, and I'm just going to say it again, is that, you know, I really appreciate what Sam Cedar and the Majority Report kind of says about this. So like, you know, as he is someone who says, like, you know, look, I support there being a state of Israel, right? He said, if the state of Israel, what is happening right now is the biggest threat to the existence of Israel and Jewish people. What is happening right now is a bigger threat to Jews than anything else. Because once there's any sense, I mean, look, I don't want to get into all the complications around Israel. I know there's a really deep, I'm not speaking from my position on this. I'm just saying Sam Cedar basically saying this, look, I'm supporting. However, what I'm going to say, you know, what he says is like, what's happening right now, you're going to basically strip any kind of legitimacy away. You're basically going to say that you were a state that was supposedly founded because of the reality of genocide, and now you have become the oppressor. You have become the executioner. You don't, that's a difficult road back from that. And the more that Netanyahu goes on TV and basically says things, you have to remember, I was watching this interview this afternoon. You got to remember, this is not just the Israeli government. This is the Israeli people. This is the will of the Israeli people. When he says that, and the next act is to go and commit genocide, he's telling the world that all the Israeli people are behind that. And that is not true. He puts all of them in danger. So, anyways, I was really not planning on going into all that tonight. So, like, to such a degree, but it's just like, this is just one of these things, right? It's pretty crazy. What else did I want to talk about tonight? The other thing, tomorrow's a big day. No, and not because it's another snow day, but because tomorrow is a special election in Pennsylvania. And this is the Pennsylvania's 140th district. And this special election is going to determine the majority of the Pennsylvania State House. Right now, the Democrats hold basically they have majority by a thread. So Jenny Stevens did a great article on this, and I was going to read a little bit from her thing just so you know this is kind of going out. So Tuesday's special election in Pennsylvania's 140th district between Democrat Jim Prokopiec and Republican Candace Cabanas will determine more than who will provide representation to local constituents. It will determine whether Democrats retain control of the state house. The chamber was a 101 to 101 tie before a Republican state legislator resigned on Friday in a safe Republican district. So this race will still effectively determine who maintains control of the legislative body moving forward, describing Bucks County as a, quote, perennial bellwether, unquote. Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee President Heather Williams sees the special election as one of the most important races of the year. Quote, the stakes of Tuesday's election truly couldn't be higher. We know the future of abortion access and fundamental rights in Pennsylvania are on the line, Williams said prior to introducing Prokopiec in a Zoom press conference on Friday. Quote, if we flash back to 2022, when Republicans controlled both state chambers, Pennsylvanians were living in a grim reality. Republicans were dead set on circumventing the Democratic governor to legislate Pennsylvania backwards. Prokopyak is a 30-year-old resident of Levittown. He served as a Falls Township supervisor and currently sits on Pennsbury School Board. This is also an important thing, is an important connection, because, in Pennsbury School, he sits on the Pennsbury School Board, and in Pennsbury School Board was an example of where that they fought off the right-wing advance. And there was a significant effort put on getting rid of all the Democrats on that board, but instead they campaigned, they organized, and they won a majority, then they expanded their majority in there. And he was kind of one of these folks, right? So he says, quote, "Most of my adult life I've been fighting to make Lower Bucks County a better place to live, work, and raise a family. I decided to run because for too many in Pennsylvania and in Lower Bucks County, the American dream seems harder and harder to achieve," Prokopyak said. Quote, we create livable wages, fully fund our public education system, create attainable housing, and protect women's reproductive rights," and it goes on. Now, the Democratic added, this is a little bit further on, the Democratic candidate added that he cannot stand idly by and allow his opponent to help advance an extremist PA GOP agenda in Harrisburg. The MAGA extremist label is something that the Washington Post reported that Kavanaugh has been trying to run away from, going so far as to not mentioning she's a Republican on her campaign mailers and website and refusing to share with her voters her personal views on abortion. So this is huge stakes. Again, so if you are in the 140th district, please, and you're listening to my voice, please, I implore you to get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. It is going to be absolutely critical. The special election is tomorrow. It's run just like any other election. You have to go to your polling place, right? If you haven't got an absentee ballot already, but it is going to the 140th district. If you need to know what your district is and you're not sure, you can use your Find Your District tool, right? I'm going to post that right in today's show notes. Show notes. This is in today's chat. Right? Go and find out. If you are not sure, go in there, search your address, and see if you're in the 140th. It's in Lower Bucks. Right? Check it out. The 140th district includes 33 voting precincts across Morrisville Borough, Tullytown Borough, Falls Township, and some of Middletown Township. So please, if you are in that area, please make sure you get out. If you know people in that area, take a couple minutes, send them a message, get them on Facebook, send them a text, or give them a call. Tell them, make sure they get out there to vote. It is absolutely critical that election is won. In other news, what else we got here? Oh yeah, you may have seen this. This is a great piece by Pat LaMarche, also in the Bucks County Beacon. She reported on this new Bucks County report, NAACP Bucks County report on policing. It shows a need for reform, starting with competent data collection. So basically, there was a this ongoing issue about trying to figure out. We hear anecdotally that there is an increase, or that African Americans and minorities in Bucks County were being kind of treated differently, right? They were more subjected to kind of violent treatment by the police, but nobody was keeping track of this stuff, right? So there was a push to get this done, right? Here's how the article starts, and then I'll tell you what some of the details. So several Christmases ago, Langhorne resident Kama Sherman Knuckles and her husband hosted a family celebration. When one of the nephews got out of hand, Kama's husband asked him to leave. Quote, outside, he got even more belligerent. He started banging on the windows, throwing snow inside the house. We had kids inside. We didn't want to call the police, but we wanted to do the right thing. My husband ended up getting arrested on Christmas Day. Sherman Knuckles recalled the moment the police arrived. Her nephew had run off, and her husband waited on the front lawn to explain to the officers that after he called for help, the young man had fled, knowing the police were on their way. Sherman Knuckles watched as the police told her husband that he was under arrest. He struggled, saying, "No, it's not me. I'm the one who called you." The police then accused him of resisting arrest. They couldn't believe their eyes for me, and they should have spent their time looking for the nephew. A couple got a lawyer. They kind of went, and this kind of went on. For Sherman Knuckles, the whole event was traumatizing. Quote, my husband wouldn't let me go to court. He told me he cried like a baby in the courtroom, pleading guilty to something he didn't do. I mean, this is so horrific about what went on. So stories like this have been told, people are hearing it. So Karen Downer, she's the president of NAACP of Bucks County, basically said, well, look, we need to kind of figure out what's going on. Nobody was kind of getting data on this situation, so we need to start collecting data. And she started a report. Now, last week, the Reimagining Public Safety team from the NAACP announced the results of their study, one that attempted to include all 39 municipal police departments of the county. However, depending on the information requested, as many 15 departments completely ignored the request for data. Intended to collect racial demographics on everything from traffic stops to the use of force and other complaints, the report instead revealed that, for the most part, none of the data existed. Unavailable at the local level, Downer and the members of her team thought they might access racial demographics regarding police interaction through the county government. Quote, we met with the commissioners and thought that they would have the information because they were the head of the government, but there really wasn't any oversight. That led us to finding out that they, law enforcement agencies, didn't have to keep track of the data in the same way. John Blevins, volunteer policy researcher and data analyst who drafted the report, put the deficient data he received from individual police departments up against the only racial data available, arrest statistics compiled by the Pennsylvania State Police and submitted to the FBI. Initially, the lack of information coming from local police departments surprised Blevin. Quote, I expect a lot more data to be publicly accessible, but there wasn't anything but state police data. We could only compare racial demographics for arrest and use of force that resulted in death or bodily injury, unquote. Based on lack of information collected from local police forces, there was no way to study the quantity or study to quantify the number of altercations with police and people of color. What they do know from the FBI data, depending on the offense, Black and multi-race individuals are arrested at 2 to 3 times the frequency as their white counterparts. And it goes on. So this report, so now they're basically really pushing to make sure that you get one, you mandate the reporting of the data. So all this is going on, and then to find out what the actual statistics are. One other piece I wanted to find out, I just lost it. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. No, I just lost it. So this was kind of a really, I mean, this is a great, again, this is what, I mean, how many times am I going to plug the Bucks County Beacon in my lifetime? I tell you, this is why you need reporting like this. This is why you need this kind of work, right? To basically, not only is the NAACP doing this work, right, that our county government didn't even have the data for, right? And that no one had pushed, well, I don't want to say no one, but no one had been successful as of yet in forcing police officers, police departments to report kind of demographic data in terms of the results, in terms of their arrest and kind of encounters with individuals. But now that report was issued, and now the Bucks County Beacon reports on that, so we all get to know, right? Because, look, frankly, work like this from the Bucks County NAACP, this is not the first time they've done stuff like this. Right? Raise problems, gone and try to solve the problems. The difference is that now, because of the Bucks County Beacon, right, and it's made it smaller outlets too, because of people like Pat LaMarche and because of the Bucks County Beacon, we get to read about it, know what's going on, so that we can then take part in that. This is like such critical reporting. So definitely check that out. I think that's about all I've got for this evening, folks. I do want to kind of encourage you once again, if you have not already, look, I don't want to be the kind of social media pusher here. But what I will tell you is, and you've heard me talk about this somewhat before, I just been increasingly frustrated with any time that I spend on Twitter or X. Seriously, before Elon Musk, this is just a perfect example of this. Before Elon Musk took over, I don't think, if I had ever got like a follow request from a, like whatever quasi porn or phishing site. If I ever got one of those, it was so few, it was so little that it's like it just I don't even remember it, right? And since Musk took over, I mean, anytime I get a notification, I usually get notifications of other people from like in Bucks County and things like this who are involved in political work say, oh, somebody decided to follow you and to follow them back and so on. I get bombarded with all these notifications, and I'm sure you do too. And like, it's like, whatever, some made up name has some picture of some scantily clad, kind of young woman on it and says, follow me. And you look at their statistics and they have like, you know, there's like 4 followers but they follow like thousands of people to try to get them in on their scheme, right? Because somebody's trying to scam you. Somebody's trying to get money from you. Somebody's trying to get you to use this, thing. I mean, I'm like, what the hell is that? I don't even want to be on a site that's going to do that. And then let's see, I just got a bunch of notifications. I'm just curious. Oh no, this is all good stuff from Emily. I'm just checking. But that's on Blue Sky. All right, because I'm on Blue Sky right now, right? But anyway, so I mean, Twitter. I just look. That used to be my go-to place for kind of politics. It used to be the go place where build out followers. I want to push out this show out onto social media accounts, and that's how we got kind of like more people to follow and participate in our program to give us information. That's where I found guests and all this, and I frankly I just don't really want to be on that site very much anymore. And and frankly, this I tried Mastodon, right, when Mastodon first came out as an alternative, and like it's a cool place, right, but it's not what I want ultimately. Like for me, I'm not a person who spends a lot of time just kind of like on social media all the time, right, kind of talking with people and going back and forth. For me, I've kind of got this kind of mindset of like, this is part of like the political work I do. These are the people, the political folks I want to kind of engage with, share information, promote what we do here in Raging Chicken, and that's pretty much it. Mastodon is really kind of like an attempt at a community, right? Building up this communities and kind of communities and people online. It's a really nice space, but it's not a replacement for Twitter. And Threads look promising kind of initially, right? Kind of coming out there. But it's it's kind of dead, right? There's not a whole lot going on there in the way. But Blue Sky has been pretty cool, right? I mean, Blue Sky has been a space that that I hope is going to kind of fill out a little bit. And so, like I said, look, if you haven't got a Blue Sky account, they just opened things up, right? You don't need an invite anymore. Tonight, I had fully expected next time I talked to I was going to say, hey, look, I got a bunch of invites that I'm going to send out anybody who wants them, but they just got rid of that. So anybody can join, right? So basically they had, invite only for kind of the longest time because they were trying to kind of, slowly roll things out to make sure that, things were going to work the way that they were supposed to work. It's actually a good practice to do. I finally got an invite thanks to the folks. Sorry. Sorry, I just got a little. Woo, sorry, I kind of got there. Anyways, but thanks to the folks at the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast who basically had some extra invites. They shot me one, and I was able to kind of get on at that point to kind of figure out how it goes on. But I'll, encourage you, like, if you are someone is on social media, does this kind of political work, has helped share the show in the past, and you're as sick as of Twitter that I am, you can head on. I just dropped the link in today's chat. That's the one for Blue Sky, and I'm going to drop in my Raging Chickens RC Press on Blue Sky. So if you do head over there, please give me a follow and I'll follow you back so that we can kind of stay in touch there. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, I have this feeling in the back of my head, this nagging feeling in the back of my head that I forgot something that I wanted to talk about tonight, but that's just going to have to do because that's my brain. I got to get ready for a snow day tomorrow. What does that mean to get ready for it? Not a whole lot. It just means that my kids are going to be home. I don't know if I am going to have to report to work tomorrow or not. As of earlier this afternoon, Kutztown still had not yet called a snow day tomorrow, so I don't know. There's a winter weather alert. Nope. I do not need to go to campus tomorrow because classes will not begin at Kutztown University until 4:30 p.m. tomorrow. So I'm home too as well. There you go. So apparently this is real. The last I checked, let me go check the weather update now for those folks who are here in Bucks County and who have been following the weather too as well. The latest weather alert is saying that we will be getting about between 4 and 7 inches of snow. That's going to begin kind of overnight tonight, but the rain comes first. And it says heavy snow is expected. So we shall see. I hope so. Stay safe tomorrow is basically my point. That was the whole point of this is make sure you stay safe if you're kind of out and around tomorrow. If you're in this neck of the woods or if you're in any place where the storm is impacting, the storms have been pretty brutal. Everything from what we've seen in out in California with the storms and the damage that's happened out there, all throughout the South. This is little, unfortunately, little windows into our climate future, but it is what it is. So we're going to try to keep safe in the meantime. And yeah, we'll see what we can do. So for now, everybody, I'm going to call it for this evening. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Thanks for the comments, Emily and Amy. It's great knowing that there's kind of folks out there. We've got stuff going on. Look forward to the show again on this Friday, February 12th. I'm sorry, February 16th, I think is what it is. Please tell me that. We will be having Catherine Joyce. We're going to be talking about her latest article in Vanity Fair called The Far Right Took Over a Pennsylvania School Board and How Parents Took It Back. That is the article that I've been waiting somebody to write on the Penn Ridge School District that has gone national. It's absolutely fantastic. Catherine Joyce has been on the show before. Her work is phenomenal, and I'll let you know as soon as we have a time nailed down. At the same time, and February 22nd, we'll have Stephen Oros, and ideally his lawyer will be joining us too as well. We're going to talk about his victory in federal court against Kutztown University's discrimination case. So there you go. All right, everybody, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. Have a good day, everybody. Be safe tomorrow. If you're someone who enjoys the show, enjoy the snow, I'm sorry, please go out and enjoy it. The rest of you, see ya!